Hello and welcome everybody. Let me know how everybody's doing in the chat. Um, Make sure the sound works because I'd hate to begin and not have anybody hear anything that I'm saying, which happens sometimes. But hello, let us know where you're from, where you're joining. Today we're going to talk about getting started with Strapi and Strapi Cloud. We're gonna see if we could go through everything that I have planned for you, but I'm pretty excited. We're going to just wait a couple of minutes for more people to jump on. And while we wait, say where you're from, where you're joining us from, how is your day going? By the way, I hope everybody's having a wonderful day or evening, wherever you are. And I'm going to prepare my screen share. But I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited today. We're going to talk about getting started with Strapi and Strapi Cloud. And more importantly, we're going to take a look how to structure our data in Strapi, how to populate our data for our users to be able to access. We're going to talk about the difference between different content types, collection types, components, dynamic zones, a lot of exciting stuff. And by the way, hey, Hannah from Paris, great to see you here. And AG saying hello, welcome, welcome. And by the way, let me know if you have been using Strapi, if so, for how long. And we will have Q&A at the end. And if you do have questions, by the way, that pertain to the stuff that I'm demonstrating, you could ask them during the stream as well. But I'm glad and super excited to have everybody here. So we'll wait another minute before starting. And I see people saying hello. And I'm so excited. All right, all right, all right. So we'll jump right into it. And if anybody has any questions specifically to the stuff that I'm demonstrating, you can. Also, if you have any other questions, so we will have a little Q&A after we're done with everything. So today, getting started with Strapi and Strapi Cloud. I'm Paul. I'm a developer advocate here at Strapi. And I love Strapi because when I first started learning web development as a front-end developer, one of the struggles I had is how do you build full-stack applications for your clients when you yourself still a front-end developer? And that's where my love for Strapi came, because it allowed me to build full-stack applications as a front-end developer with using Strapi to create amazing backend with an amazing admin panel that allows you to manage your data. So I love Strapi. So we're going to briefly talk about why Strapi. Then we're going to talk about getting started with Strapi, how to set it up. We're going to build our first landing page. We're going to take a look at how you can deploy your project to Strapi Cloud. And then we're going to conclude with a Q&A. So why Strapi? And kind of alluded at the beginning, because it allows small teams or big teams or anybody who basically wants saying I have, if something already exists, you don't have to recreate the wheel from the beginning, right? So stand on shoulders of giants and use the technologies available. So Strapi is easy to get started with. It gives you full admin panel to manage your content from. You get role-based access out of the box. You structure your data with collection types. You're able to use dynamic zones and components, something we'll take a look at in a little bit more detail in a little bit to show you how to structure your data. It's API driven first, so you'll be able to structure data and your front-end developers could hit an endpoint and get that data, and integrates very well with other third-party services as many as other things. And so for me, the magic of Strapi is that you're able to get started really quickly, but if you're looking for advanced customizations, it allows that as well. So we're going to jump in right into it. We're going to get started with Strapi, and I'm going to go through this demo with you together. And if you want to follow along, you of course can. So let's first set up Strapi. We're going to do a quick admin panel overview, talk about collection types, single types, and this concept of top-level fields, relations, components, and dynamic zones, which is very important when it comes to populating your data. And again, if at any time you have questions, I do want to keep this interactive. Definitely go ahead, ask them in chat or in questions. That's pretty awesome because I do want to hear your questions and your thoughts. So setting up Strapi, it's very straightforward. We're going to run this command, create Strapi app at latest, and we could call it whatever we like. So I'm going to go into my terminal, but if you ever have any questions about Strapi, there's best way to do it is to go to the documentation, but we also have Monday through Friday open office hours on Discord, 12:30 p.m. CST, that you could join and actually ask questions that you have. But I'm going to follow our docs. We're going to go under get started, make sure that you have Node, one of these versions installed. I'm running in Node 18. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally copy and paste this command here into my terminal. And this is going to go ahead and set up Strapi for me. When you use the quick start command, it will set it up with basic settings, and it will spin up SQLite database for your project to easily get started. Now, when you are deploying your application, of course, you could change what database you want to use in production. For instance, you can use Postgres or any other options that we have available. Now, while this is loading up, let me come back here to the side. So what we're going to take a look at today, and we're going to try to build all these components, but I'm going to be mindful of the time. Maybe we'll start with 2 first, and then go through all the other things, because I do want to show you how to deploy the project and push it to production today. But we're going to look at this website that we have, and we're going to build and structure, model our data for this website, which is a basic landing page, which has a hero section, benefits section, has the pricing page, and has a call to action. Now, our Strapi app has built and started for us. So I'm going to go ahead. When you first start your app, it's going to ask you to create your first user admin. So I'm going to go ahead and create one. Paul Bratz, Paul dot. The one thing I can't do is speak and type at the same time. So I am sorry for that. I don't know why that happens. And make sure you have a secure password like monkey1234 for everything, right? And keep me updated with new features. Let's start. They might ask you, what do you do for work? Front-end developer, finish. And once you click finish, it's going to launch your application within the Strapi admin. So what we're going to do first is to do a quick tour through our admin panel. And again, if you have any questions, you could definitely ask them in the chat. I'm going to do a quick overview with the most basics, and then we'll go from there. So when you're first starting out, you start with your Strapi dashboard. And if you click Content Manager, this is where you're going to have all your different content types where your content editors could add data. Out of the box, the only collection type you have is users, which has basic user information. Now, if we want to add new collection types, content types, and so on, we would use the content type builder. There's 3 types of items that you could create. You could create a collection type, single type, and a component. When you think of a collection type, it's something that you're going to have a lot of. Like, you're going to have a lot of pages, many services, right? A lot of products. So that'll be a good use case of using a collection type. If you're going to have just one single type, maybe you're going to have a global settings page for your website, that would be a good example of creating a single type. So you could use single type for pages, but typically what I like to do for anything that is just going to be standalone and it's the only thing, like a global settings page or something, I will use for single types. And components is a great way for you to create reusable groups of things. Like, you could think of, like, my page needs metadata. So you could create a metadata component, which will have meta title, meta image, and you could group it inside your component and then reshare it in your other collection types or content types, or use it many times over. So it allows you to create reusable components that you could reuse in your applications. Another example would be creating a button link, which will allow you to do that. And we'll take a look more on that as we go through it. Then you have your media library. When you set up your Strapi application locally, all the media items are stored in the file system. When you deploy your project, you would have to decide how would you want to manage that. Some people use Cloudinary, some people use Amazon. But if you want a one-stop solution using Strapi Cloud, it solves all of that out of the box. You just deploy your application, and we will handle that for you. Then you have your plugins, and here it'll show all the plugins that you currently have installed. And what's awesome about plugins, if there's a functionality that does not exist in Strapi, you can go ahead and either build your own plugin and add that functionality, or you could check out the marketplace and see all the different plugins that other folks have created. And there are some plugins that created by Strapi team, but majority of these are created by other developers that just want to share cool things that they have created. And by the way, if you have any questions, let me know. Is my screen big enough? Can you read everything? And I'm going to check the chat, make sure anybody has questions. Yeah, at any time, if you have questions, I do want to make this interactive. Let me know. So now we move on to our settings page, and we're going to take a look at administration panel and user permission plugin. When you set up your Strapi application, Strapi actually has two types of users. There are users who are going to be using the admin panel, what you see here, and this may not be your customers. This is more for people who are going to be managing your content, managing your data within the Strapi admin panel. And that's what admin panel users refers to. So if I click on users, you could see I am a super admin user. I am logged in into my admin panel, and anybody that is going to be working in your admin panel will be an administration panel user, to which you could assign roles. You could have, out of the box, you have author, editor, super admin, but you could add as many roles as you want, and you could point to what permissions they have for what content types. So this is specific to using Strapi as an admin. Now, when we take a look at user permission roles, this is users of your application. For instance, your Strapi application will be front-end application that you have. Maybe you have a business website. Maybe you have a storefront website, whatever website you have. And the users on your front website, if you want to have register functionality where they are able to register to see the private post, or they need to register for a service, or they need to do something, those are the users that are managed by users permission plugin. So they're separated. So users that are managed by user permission plugin, those are the users of your front-end application. And admin panel users are your users, your content editors, who are accessing Strapi backend. I hope that's not too confusing. I hope it makes sense. Let me know if that made sense or not. But that's how I would position that. And cool, Hannah says we could see your screen. Perfect. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and take a look at our content manager. So, I mean, content type builder. We are going to create our new collection type, because what we're going to do, we're going to create a way for us to represent data for our landing page. Now, I know we're looking at a pretty design. I don't know if that's a design that I quickly came up with for a landing page, but what you have to understand, headless CMS, the power of it is the fact that you're able to manage content, have one source of truth for having the ability to power many different applications. For instance, it could be a website, it could be a mobile app, maybe you even have an IoT device, or maybe you made an app for a refrigerator. So when you're thinking of structuring your data within your Strapi app, you don't have to think about it like how does it visually appear, but you think about what's the intent of the content to present the content that could be used on many devices. So even though we have a visual representation of our final UI, when we're structuring this data in our Strapi application, structure in a way that it could be used in multi-channels, right? And so just keep that in mind. So when a lot of people use monolithic CMSs or page builders, what happens, your data gets really tied to your content. And in some cases, it makes sense, but in a lot of cases, that ties you to your front end into a single channel of presenting your data. And so the superpower of Strapi allows you to present data across many different channels, which is pretty awesome. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a content type or collection type to manage our landing pages. So I'm going to give it a really generic name. Under content type builder, I'm going to create a new collection type, and I'm going to call it page. And I'm going to click continue. Nice. And when you're creating a page, you're going to have a couple of different fields. Now, before we create our fields, I want to talk to you about this concept of top level fields and concept of relations and components. And before we finish up building this page here, let me go back to my slides for a minute and go from here. So let's talk about top level fields. So top level fields are our text, our rich text, our number, date, Boolean, JSON, UID, enumeration, password, and email. And what that means is any top level field that you add to your collection type will be automatically populated. So when you hit an endpoint, all the fields that are top level fields will automatically be populated. So notice that we have text, email, rich text, password is not going to be populated because you don't want people to see the password. Number, color, data, so on. Notice how all of these are populated in my response. And if you have any questions, let me know. But by default, all top level fields are automatically populated. So text, email, rich text, number, color, data, our Boolean is public, our JSON, our slug, and so on. And everything else, we have relationships, components, and dynamic zones. Now, when we take a look at our different options, we have our media, which is a relation. We have our relations, components, and dynamic zones. And under the hood in the database, they're all relations that point to something else. In order to populate media, relation, components, and then dynamic zones, you have to specifically tell Strapi the things that you want to populate. So in this example, notice when I hit that endpoint, just looking to populate my images, my relation, my metadata, and my block, which is my relationships, components, and dynamic zones, notice I get nothing. You don't see any of those items. And that's because by default, they're not populated. And the reason why Strapi does this is similar to GraphQL. We want to give you control of your data to be able to populate only the things that you want to prevent overfetching and underfetching. So in the next example, and basically the difference between top-level components and relations is that we need to specify what relations we want to populate. And we could do that in many ways, but in this basic example, I'm going to use a wildcard operator, which will populate first level deep. And if this doesn't make too much sense, we will talk about it as this stream goes by, and I'll give you some good resources to read up on it. But notice after we use our populate flag and refresh, we have our images, we have all the data is populated for us, all the relationships. So that's something to keep in mind. So like I said, this gives us more control over our response object and helps us to prevent overfetching and underfetching. And so let's take a look how we could start structuring our landing page here. So let's start. We created a content type, collection type, I should say, page, and we're going to have our first field is going to be a title. We're going to click add another field. We're going to say text, let's say description. And then let's add another field. And we're going to call it UI ID, which is going to be our slug. And you could use your slug to look up your page. And we're going to associate it to the title and finish. Okay, so now we have our basic page. So if I click save, we could go to our content manager. Here's our new page that we created. And I'm going to say home, my first page, what have you, and click save. And make sure you click published. So now if I want to see this page in my response, I need to give Strapi permissions. So under settings, under users and permissions, because this is our control for our API layer here for returning data, we're going to click roles, and we're going to go for public just to make it easy. And under page, this is our page that we just created. We're going to say find and find one. And you can go to this endpoint in a tool like Postman or Insomnia, but because we're making a GET request, I will just do it in my browser. So I'm going to go local host 1337, and then it's API pages. And when I click enter, notice how we are getting our top level fields that I mentioned, our title, description, and slug. So now let's think about it. All of our pages probably should have some sort of metadata. So let's create our first component, and let's create a metadata component. I have too many screens open. So here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, here we are. Here we are. So we're going to go back to our Strapi. I made it too big, too big. Let me shrink it down a little bit. So now we want to create our first component. So under content type builder, and let me look at the chat. Under content type builder, we're going to go create a new component, and we're going to give it a name. We're going to call it metadata, really original. and we want to associate it to a category. I'm just going to call this SEO and click continue. And our metadata component is going to have a text field, which is going to be meta title. That makes sense. Then we're going to keep it a short text. We're going to add another field. Text is going to be long text. We're going to call it meta description. Spelling is also an issue. I got to be careful, make sure I spell things correctly. And let's add another field for media. It's going to be a single image. We're going to call it meta image. And we're just going to make sure under advanced, we only allow for images, and click finish and save. So now we have created our first SEO component. Let's go ahead and add it to our content through our content manager. Go to pages. I meant to say content type builder because we're building our page, right? It makes sense. So under content type builder, add another field collection. We're going to add a component this time. And we're going to use an existing component that we just created. Let's select that component. It's going to be a single component. We're going to select SEO metadata and give it a name, metadata. And let's click finish. So here we are. I can't speak today. Here we are. We have our basic landing page starting to take shape. We have our title, description, slug, and then we have our metadata component. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. Go to our content manager now, and we're going to go ahead and add our metadata. I'm going to say home page, whatever, some description, and we're going to add a meta image here, add new asset. And I think everybody loves cats, so we'll add this cute cat photo, upload assets, and finish and save. Okay, so now our page has our title, description, our slug, our metadata, meta description, and meta image. So now let's go to our browser here, and we're going to refresh. So interestingly enough, wait, why does our metadata component not show up? And this comes to this idea of top level fields, right? And our relationships. So our components, there are relations. So we need to tell Strapi to specifically populate. So we could use our populate wildcard. So that's star. And notice how we get the meta title, meta description, but not the image, because it only populates one level deep. So for us, we need to kind of have understanding of how Strapi populate functions to allow us to be able to tell Strapi the things that we want to populate. And there's many ways to do this, but Strapi has this amazing tool called the Strapi Interactive Query Builder tool that allows you to use our object populate notation that you could see in our documentation to kind of show you how to populate. So I'm going to kind of work through this with you. So we have our object, and we want to populate our metadata. And inside our metadata, we want to populate our meta image, because all the other components are already populated because they're top level components, but our meta image is a relation. So we have to tell Strapi that we want to populate it, right? And I'm just going to say populate true. And to be honest, when I first started learning about populated filtering, especially if you've never done this before, it seems a little bit intimidating, but once you get the use of it and see how it works, it makes it easy. So now our query builder gives us this nice query string that we could use. So let's give it a try. And under pressure, I probably mess up. Nope, we did it right. So notice now we're getting our metadata, we're getting our meta image, and we're getting all this. Our meta image has way too much stuff in here. Maybe I don't need all that stuff, right? And here's the cool portion of like populating filtering is that you could kind of dictate the things that you want. Maybe I just want name, alternative text, and just the URL. So inside our query builder, let's go ahead and do that. And under meta image, we're going to say fields, and this takes an array. It should be a comma. And the array is the names of fields that you want to populate. So we want to populate URL. What else did we want to populate? Was it name, title? I forgot what it was. I already forgot. Localhost. We wanted to populate name and alternate text. I'm going to copy alternate text because that's probably tough to spell for me. So let's go fields, name, and alternate text. Let's copy our query string to clipboard. Let's go ahead back to our browsers here and let's paste that query string. Nice. And notice how we return a much smaller response with only the data that we need. So notice we are getting our title, description, our slug, our metadata with our meta title, meta description, meta image. And for meta image, we're just getting the URL, the name, and alternative text, which is pretty awesome, if you ask me. And so I hope you could see the value of using populating filtering through different parameters that we've passed to allow you to control the response structure of your data, which is pretty awesome. It can be a little bit intimidating, but you could, of course, read our documentation. And I'm going to actually put a link in the description as well to this article that I wrote based on Rich's Strapi Conf talk, where he talked about demystifying populate and filtering. So I'm going to throw it in the chat as well. But if you want to get like a quick crash course on populate, here's the article to read. And it's going to kind of walk you through the process of how everything works. And I'll make sure to share it in the chat with you all here while we move on. And again, at any time, if you have questions, or please let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep going. So now we have our basic page. And so now we want to go ahead and create different blocks. So notice we have our hero section, our benefits, our pricing page, our footer. So how do we want to dynamically represent that in our Strapi application? And this is where our dynamic zones come in. So we're going to work on building this page, and we are going to represent it through using our dynamic zones and components. Basically, dynamic zones allow content managers to organize data while to allow developers to create one-to-one relationships to those components. So you have a component in your Strapi admin, and you might have a React component that matches that. So whenever you use that component in your Strapi application, a developer now has created a component that has one-to-one relation to it that will dynamically show up in your front-end application. So this allows you to have usable and flexible content structure, better way to group and organize your data, and again, can map to front-end components. And I do have an example. I have it farther down in the slides. So here, as we look, we have our dynamic zone. This is what our page kind of will look like. We're going to have our content section, whatever you want to call it, and we'll have our components like the hero, button action, whatever components you decide. And I'm just going to go forward a little bit. And then from the standpoint, how does your front-end application consume this data? Well, we have on our Strapi application, we have our hero component. And then in your Remix, your Next.js, your Vue, whatever front-end framework you're using, you're going to have I was going to say React, equivalent, but some people don't like using React. Some people like Angular. I don't know. Let me know if you like Angular. I like everything. Who am I kidding? I love React all the way. If you like Vue, I'm not going to hate, but I'm telling you. So you're going to have a React equivalent component. And when you get the data in your front end, right, you're going to have something like a section renderer, which will be a function that will basically check, hey, if I get a home component, render that home component. And if you're wondering what a section renderer may look like, it could literally be a simple if statement or switch statement. I like switch statement in this case, where you just basically check for the component, and based on the response that you get from your landing page, it will render only the components that landing page has. I hope that makes sense. But let's come back and start building our first component. We're going to start building our hero section. So to break down our hero section, we have an image, we have a heading, we have a subheading or text, and then we have a button link. But we also have button links on other components and sections, right? So why don't we create another component first? Because we're going to have many links, so might as well create a button link component that we could reuse in other content types or collection types. So in my Strapi admin here, I'm going to go into content type builder, and we're going to create a new component, and I'm going to call it button link. You could call it whatever you like. And we're going to create a new section called elements, and I'm going to say continue. Okay. And so our button, it should have a button text. Then our button should have a link. So let's add another field, text button link. And we'll add another field. Our button should also, the link could be internal or external. So meaning, do you want to take a link to a page that's, or do you want it to link to an external or a different website? So let's add a Boolean, and we're just going to say is external. And by default, under advanced settings, we're going to say no, it is not. And let's add another field, because when looking at our design, we have different color schemes. And when you're talking about, like, being able to specify from your components the color scheme of a website, you should never use, or I feel like you should never use a direct color, because you're not sure, is this going to go to my mobile website? Is this going to go to my website? Is this going to go to some other channel? So instead, you want to use things like primary, secondary, or what have you. And whatever different website primary color could be different than what it is on your, let's say, a mobile app. So I try not to create direct colors, but I just try to create different intentions. So we're going to use enum, and we're going to say type. And for button type, it could be secondary or primary, whatever. We'll just keep these options and click finish. So we created our button component. And so now let's go ahead and build section. So we know we're going to have a heading, our text, our button link, and our image. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So under content type builder, I'm going to click create new component. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say hero. And for this, we're going to create a new section called blocks. Click continue. Our hero section has heading, text, button, and image. Sounds good. So we're going to create our first field, text. Is going to be heading. We're going to add another field, which is going to be text. Then we're going to add another field, and it's going to be our component. And this is going to be image. And wait a second, I lied to you. We're going to do component. It's not image, it's link. And we're going to use existing component. And we're going to select single component, and it's going to be our button link. And let's call it a link. And let's add another field. And this is now, it's going to be an image. And it's just going to be image. And we just make sure on the advanced setting, only allow for images, and click finish. And so now we see our hero component representing the data that we want to show. We have our heading, we have our text, we have our link, and we have our image. And so I'm going to save this component. So let's see how we could add this component to our landing page. So if you go to Content Manager, you take a look, wait, we don't have that hero component. So you can go to your content type builder and add another field and add a component, but that's not going to make this page dynamic. You might have multiple landing pages, and not all landing pages will have a hero section, right? So instead, we're going to use our concept of dynamic zone, which allows you to select which components your editor has options from choosing. So I'm going to click dynamic zone. I'm going to call it blocks, and I'm going to add a component to my zone. We're going to use an existing component. Let's select the component. It's our hero. Click finish. and save. So now that we have our hero component, it is looking amazing. So under our content manager, we're now able to go into our first page, and we scroll down, we have this plus icon. If we click on it, it'll show us options of all the components that we have. Since we only have one component, that's the only option we see. So I'm going to click on hero, and I'm going to say, uh, hello, Strapi, because I'm so original. You are all awesome. And then we're gonna add our link, button text, click me. And this is gonna take you to some endpoint called click me or website route, click me. And is it external false? Let's, uh, like, let's add an image to our hero section. I'm gonna add more assets, browse files. We need another cat image. I'm pretty sure that makes sense. So we'll go ahead, add another cat image, upload, and finish. And now click save. So now that we have our hero section, that is fantastic. That is looking good. So if we, again, go back and run our query, notice we're not getting our image section, our hero section, because we need to tell Strapi that we want to populate the hero section directly. So using our query builder under metadata, we're going to populate our blocks, and we're going to say populate true for now. And let's save this and take a look what we get. Copy to clipboard. So let's go here and paste it in. And so now notice we're getting our blocks. And again, we're only getting our top level elements. So if I wanted to populate the link and the image, I have to tell Strapi and specify that those are the things that I want to populate. So let's update our query. And let me just check if anybody has questions in chat. No questions in chat. Okay, doing good. So here we go. Under our query builder, under populate, right? We're gonna populate. We're gonna actually, instead of using populate true, we're gonna say we want to populate our link. Populate true. And then we also want to populate, let's see, 1 second here, Strapi. So our page, we want to populate our link, and then we want to populate our image. So let's do that, populate link and image. Populate true. Nice. And let's copy this. Okay. All right. 1 second here. I have to cut this, and this has to be populate first, because I do want to specify the things that I want to populate. And boom, right there. And let's copy to clipboard, go to our thing. And notice how we're now able to get all the data for that page. We're getting our blocks, we're getting our heading, text, our link component, and our image component, which is pretty awesome. So now I just want to be mindful of the time. And before finishing up the other components, I want to touch on some of the other things that I wanted to show you. So the first thing is our Strapi application right now. It's locally deployed. We have our first page, which has our hero section. Now, I want to quickly show you how you could back up your data. So just in case you delete it, it's not like you're not going to freak out, because you could go ahead and you could re-upload your data from backup. Yes. And Skylar, that's exactly what I'm going to cover now That's 100%. I see that you asked that question. So I'm going to make sure that we cover that first. And if we have time, we'll finish up the rest components. But you basically see that we already have our initial landing page, albeit only one section. But we have an API built that is returning data. So now we want to make sure that we could push it to production. So we're going to do it in 2 steps. First, I'm going to show you how to, one, save your data locally. So in case you accidentally delete something, you're not going to have a heart attack. So which happens often with me. So we're going to go into our terminal. I'm going to stop my server and I'm going to clear my screen. And I'm going to run yarn strapi help. And we have import and export command. So I'm going to use export command. Oh, that makes sense. I should be inside my project. And let's try that again. Yarn strapi help export. And so now you're going to see options that you have. So you could make a backup. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run yarn strapi export. And I'm going to do no encrypt because I'm okay with not having my files encrypted at the moment. And then we're going to use the file flag and we're going to call it backup. When you click enter, it's going to go ahead and create your backup. So notice it shows all the items that it backed up for us. And so let me restart my server again, yarn develop, and that saved our data in backup.tar.gz file. So let me start yarn develop. So back in my application under pages, let's say I delete this. I'm like, oh no, I deleted the most important page that I needed. Like, well, that's terrible. Like, well, how do I get it back? So now we're able to import our data from backup. So again, in my terminal, I'm going to stop the server, run clear. And then I'm going to run yarn strapi. And again, if you forget what the commands are, you could run yarn strapi help and you could do import and it will tell you all the flags that you need. So I'm going to run yarn strapi import and then name of the file. And I called it backup. So when I click enter, it's going to ask me, do you want to proceed? Because it's going to go ahead and overwrite all the data. Currently, right now, it's going to overwrite everything. So make sure that the file you're importing is the exactly data that you want to import. So I'm going to click yes. It's going to go ahead, do its thing, run yarn develop, and bam, that has finished. And so now when I go back to my Strapi application and I refresh, our data's back. Great. I could stop having my heart attack because I deleted something I'm not supposed to. So the next question Skylar had is, how do you transfer the data between your deployed project with your local one? So we're going to take a look at that next. And before we could do that, we need to actually deploy our project, as simple as it is. So in my terminal, I'm going to stop my project. And the way our deployment works is through your GitHub. So we want to make sure we save our project to GitHub. For brevity of this tutorial, and because part of it is I wanted to showcase Strapi Cloud to you, I'm going to deploy this project to Strapi Cloud first. But there's many other options to deploy. And Strapi Cloud for me is like, I'm not a DevOps guy. I hate managing the deployment process. I just want to just have a service that I could pay for and not worry about it. And Strapi Cloud is that service for me. So if I were to build websites as a freelancer for my clients, I would just use Strapi Cloud as part of my service, just because it's easy and I don't have to deal with it. And that's to me, that's the benefit of it. So if we go to strapi.io, we're gonna click on the cloud button. Now I already have a Strapi Cloud account. When you click that button, it's going to go ahead and ask you to sign up with GitHub. Once you sign up, you're going to see this admin panel where you're able to create a new project. Like I said, before creating a new project, what you need to do is make sure that your local project is safe to Git. So let me go to GitHub and create new project. and I'm going to call this cloud demo deploy. Click create repository. And then I'm going to copy the snippet, go inside our, I have too many windows open, local project, boom, git add, git status to see all the things we added, and commit with a message, first commit, git push, and let's see now in our GitHub here, refresh. All right, perfect. So we have a Strapi project saved to our GitHub repo. So step one is done. So next step, we're gonna go under Strapi Cloud, and I'm gonna click create project. My internet is a little bit slower, so I'm gonna hang out here for a little bit. But while this is loading for me, I'm going to and question, can we set up email plugin for confirmation when users sign up? You could see that in our documentation. If we do have time, we could take a look. When you're setting up the email plugin, the difficulty of it is not so much the setup process, Artyom, but it's the fact that everybody uses different email providers, and you already need to have, in order for the email to be set up, actually, let me rephrase that. With Strapi Cloud, this is going to be set up automatically for you, which is the beauty of Strapi Cloud. But if you were to go another route, you would have to decide what email provider you're using. Do you have your domain name? Like if I had a website codingafter30.com, you would need a domain specific email set up already. So there's multiple steps outside of just hooking it up. But you could, depending like how your project is deployed. And I actually, hold on here. Let me just do a little detour. YouTube, Strapi, email, cloud provider setup. Yeah, so I made this video that actually walks you through that step. So let me go share it with you, Artyom. So if we don't get to it today, you could check out that video that will show you how to add a custom provider to your Strapi application and Strapi Cloud. So, but moving on. So here we have create a new project. When you're first starting out, you're going to have an option for a free plan to try it out. I already used up that option, so I'm gonna go ahead and just use the monthly plan for our pro. But if you've never set up a Strapi Cloud project, you will be able to get a free trial, give it a test run to see if it's the right fit for you. A lot of people ask me, who is Strapi Cloud for? And for instance, if you have a personal blog and you're not getting too much traffic on it, you're not generating income from it, maybe Strapi Cloud is not the best fit. For me, Strapi Cloud is for people who are generating income from their services. So if you have clients and you're building websites for them and you just don't want to deal with the deployment, or you don't have enough people on the team, because having DevOps people on your team, it costs money, right? You need to have that infrastructure. So for freelancers, marketing agencies that build websites, developers that already have paying clients, it makes perfect sense, because you're like, hey, instead of doing the deployment myself and having headaches around it, I'm just going to charge the client this monthly fee for the service, and I'm just going to pass the cost to them. So that's why it's called the pro plan and not a hobby plan. We made a decision at Strapi to start with a pro plan, just because we do want to make sure that we are creating a good product, but at the same time, we're serving a need that helps to generate income. Because Strapi being open source product, you have the community edition, which is free forever. You could use it however you like. And so the two ways that Strapi makes money is providing support for our enterprise users and services like this through Strapi Cloud. So just wanted to give you the full rundown there. As like a lot of people ask, how do open source companies stay profitable or make money? Well, by creating services like this. But anyway, so now I want to go ahead and connect to my repository, and that repository is called Cloud Demo Deploy. So I'm going to click on it. Fantastic. Yep. And then next, I'm going to go under setup, giving a name. I'm just going to say test project for now. And then my main branch. And you have an option depending if you are in US or in Europe, which region you want to choose. I'm in Austin, Texas, so New York is the closest for me. And I'm going to click continue to billing, which is going to use my credit card on file to initiate the project. I'm going to say create the project. And it's going to start the creation project. While this is creating the project, so we don't have to wait for this, I'm just going to show you uh, open cloud again. Which project? They have too many projects. This one. So I'm just going to quickly show you the way you transfer data. I'll talk through the steps here, but we will project once it's finished. So I already have an app here. I'm going to visit that. It's a different app. Let me log in. Hopefully I remember my password. Oh, come, my goodness. My goodness. I must have picked a very secure password. So when you want to send data from your local environment to your Strapi Cloud, or it could be hosted any other options that you have. Maybe you're hosting it on Amazon, wherever it is. We have this transfer option that you could use. So under settings, the first thing you would do is you would create a transfer token. And here I already have a transfer token, but I'll show you and walk you through the process. You would say create a new transfer token, and it's gonna say the name, which is doesn't matter, and token duration 7 days, and the type of token you want. If you're pushing data from your local, you would say push. If you're pulling data from your cloud or your deployed instance, you would say pull, or you could use full access. If I want to push data, I'm just going to say push, click create and save, and make sure that you have this token available to you. But let me see, this is still building. And the deployment does take a little bit of time, but yeah. So once you have your token, and I don't have this project locally, but I'm just gonna walk you through the steps without actually firing this function. But in your local instance, right, you have access. Let me clear my screen. Yarn, Strapi, help, transfer. So you have access to Strapi transfer, and the basic flags that it takes, either from source URL or to destination source. So for instance, if I was transferring to the cloud, I would use to and the destination URL and then pass my to token. If I was transferring from cloud, I would use the cloud source and from token. And those are two differences. And so let me see if our project finished building, so I could kind of actually walk you through the project that we're deploying. And it's getting there. It's almost done. Almost done. Almost done. So we're going to wait for a little bit. And let me check in the chat any questions here. Yeah, so Skylar, for security and being able to identify if you have permission to transfer, yes, it's always necessary to use a transfer token, and this is something you have to set up. And it's a little bit beyond like the scope of this particular video, but there is a way to set up this automatically, where you're able to transfer through environment, either using a like a GitHub action or something, but it's not something we recommend. Right, like Derek says here, what we recommend for now, it's just do it in the CLI like we do right now. It's not once it's not that many steps. but it makes it just much simpler for someone who, let's say, is not comfortable with scripting and stuff like that. But basically, the steps you would do if I want to transfer data to Strapi Cloud in my local instance, I would use that transfer command. I would say URL2, token2, click transfer. And if I want to pull from the cloud, I would use the from URL and from token. And if you were going to make changes, like the workflow would be go to your Strapi Cloud and pull data from Strapi Cloud, make all the changes locally. If you need to run like a migration on a database, you could run a migration on a database with all the changes that you need to do. And then you would reverse it and push the data back to Strapi Cloud. So let me see if this built yet. Almost. Build complete. Take me to my application. I don't have the patience. Drink some of my tea. Yeah. And yeah, thanks, Derek, for jumping in. By the way, what Derek is describing is something that at some point I will make a video about it. Paul, can you give me your debug ID? Once I get the application going, yes, it's building. So quick recap, which is kind of like frustrating. Like I wish like deploying your project to Strapi Cloud was like much harder so I could have extra steps, but it's literally create your GitHub repo, go into Strapi Cloud, right? Click create project, point to your repo, and then just wait for it to deploy. It literally cannot be any easier. And here's the cool thing about Strapi Cloud that I want to share. Notice I have multiple projects here. So what's awesome, if I'm like a marketing agency or working on multiple projects, I have multiple clients, I'm able to manage all the projects from one area here because I have access to all the different deploy projects that I have. So this is really nice feature of just having one place where you could manage all your Strapi projects and instances. And that's to me, like, I'm always excited. Like, people tell me, Paul, what would happen if you get fired from Strapi? And I'm like, well, I'm going to start a developer agency and I'm going to build websites powered with Remix, the greatest front-end framework ever. Or you could use Next 13 or you Vue lovers out there, and always use Strapi for backend and just build websites for my clients and just use Strapi Cloud. And just it's just so it's easy. And again, is it for everybody? You got to make that decision for yourself. But in my opinion, if you're getting paid for your services and you don't want to have headaches with deployment and stuff like that, to me, it makes perfect sense. And I've been spoiled because I've only been deploying my projects with Strapi Cloud, and I don't see myself going back. Like really, really good service. So let's see if we finished here. Build complete. All right, so we are finished. Let me close all these unnecessary folders. I'll walk you through that example. So I'm gonna go to my website. Refresh, and I broke something. The demo gods don't like me. Oh, we'll give a few minutes for the DNS update. I know I have ADHD, and like the patience with my brain is like, I just want to show these cool features. But yeah, so like transferring is like fairly like straightforward using the token and stuff like that. But while we're waiting for DNS, like any other questions anybody else has before we get to that demo of showing you how to transfer data to your cloud project? Yeah, so yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. Let's see here. Anyway, so let me see, like, let me go check something, because instead of waiting for this deploy, let me go to deploy review Strapi Cloud. Let me see test project. Test project. That's not the one. Oop. Doop, 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 doop. Yeah, I just have to wait for it to propagate its DNS server. Um, Takes some time. But so anyway, so while that's working, we could like build out another component before we take a look at how to transfer. Yeah, let me give Derek that quick debug quick just in case. Maybe I'm known for like breaking stuff. So actually make sure it's the right project. It's this one. Just to double check, go into settings, copy. I'm pretty sure it's just like taking a little bit of time. Not worried about it. Yeah, so it's just working already. I'm just impatient. I'm just impatient. So here we go. We're back into our project that we just deployed. And whenever you deploy your first initial project, you will need to create your admin user. Now that this project is deployed to the cloud, make sure you choose an actual strong password. I know I recommend monkey123, but please don't use monkey123. This is a project that's deployed. Let's get started. And so here we are. This is my cloud instance. If we take a look, I don't have any data. I don't have any data in my project here. And so what we want to do is push data from our local environment to our cloud environment. So let's go under settings. We're going to create not API token. We're going to create a transfer token, create new transfer token called transfer. I'm very original with names. And we're going to say 7 days. And this is to push data. Click save. Now, two things you want to have is your deployed instance URL, including /admin. So now we go to our local project and we're going to do yarn strapi transfer. And we're going to do from source. I'm going to paste that URL, Norse House, including /admin. I'm going to click enter. And next is going to ask to add and provide the transfer token. And so I'm going to copy my token, click save. And inside my terminal, I'm going to paste that token and click enter. Again, this transfer will delete all the local Strapi assets in its database. Are you sure you want to proceed? So please understand this is, kind of will replace all the data with the data that you want to restore. So make sure that you are replacing it with the data that you actually want to replace it with. I'm going to click yes. Now it's going to have a warning. It says, I failed to initialize, failed with code. Are you sure you want to delete? Failed to initialize the connection. I probably used the wrong token. Let's see that again. Yarn transfer. Did I save the token? 1 second here. The transfer. So let's see. This is Jolly, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's say copy, save. Is this the right project? Okay, let's go back. Yarn develop. Let's try that again. Yarn Strapi transfer. To actually, let's see my from to destination. Did I go back here to boop, 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 boop. Yep, to destination URL. Yes, yes. And then now let's paste that token. API token, copy, save. transfer token safe. And let's go here. Leads from your Strapi. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes. All right. So now I did pass the proper token. Make sure that you pass the proper token. So it's going to say review workflow feature does not exist because this is only available in our Teams plan, but I'm using Pro plan. So don't worry about it. You could just click yes, click enter, and it's going to go ahead and transfer all the data that we had in our local instance and push it to our cloud. Once this is done in my cloud instance, if I go to Content Manager, now you see our landing page that we created. And so let me time here. So we do have some time here. So we could continue to build out more pages, or if you wanted to know, is there an easier way to, let's say, pre-populate data? So instead of having to constantly pass this huge URL string from our front end, maybe you want to be able to pre-populate the data. So that way, instead of having to pass that, you just go to, slash pages, and all the data is going to be pre-populated. So let me know if you want to. Here, let's vote, because we did schedule this till 11:30. We could answer some questions. If you have questions, ask, or let's vote. Do you want to see how to build out the pricing component, or instead, do you want to see how we are able to populate our data without having to pass the query string from the front end? So have it be pre-populated on the back end, because we know landing page, all the items that it has, and I'll show an example. So check this out. If let me just go here, go into settings. Let me just make sure I have all the permissions here. Public for our page, and I'll show you what I mean. So notice here, so if I go to API page, I can't spell, API pages, right? It's only going to return the top level fields, and it's not going to return any of the other items unless we pass the full query string. Oops, I add an extra thing there. Good Lord. We pass the query string. Once we pass the query string, notice it populates the data. But let me show you another app that I have. Let me go to Strapi Cloud Projects. It's this one right here, test deploy. Let me go visit app. So look at here. If I go API, I believe it's landing pages on this one. Landing pages, and I click enter. Notice how this is pre-populated already. So do you see how on our current application, we have to pass the query string from the front end, but on my other application, I don't need to do that because that's pre-populated like on the back end. So let me know, do you want to see how to pre-populate your data via middleware, or do you want to see how to create the pricing component? Or do you just want to see me keep asking questions? Pre-populate data. Okay, that's one vote to pre-populate data. I'm excited. I like that because, it's a very useful way of doing it. And I'm going to also share a resource for you. So you have it if you want to get additional, like if you kind of forget like what I cover, or maybe you want a second kind of like reference. Kellen wrote a really good blog post based on this called Route-Based Middleware to Handle Default Query Logic Population. So that's what we're going to do. So let's do that now. So that sounds good. So I stopped the server, right? And what we basically want to do is we have our query builder, which is basically has our query, and we want to be able to insert this into our code somehow, prior to returning the response. So a good way to handle that is to create a route middleware. So in your CLI on your local desktop, you could run yarn strapi generate, and it's going to give you a couple of options. So what we want to do, we want to create a middleware, and we're going to call it populate data, like very original, right? Populate data. And we're going to add this. I probably should have called it populate page, but too late. I'm not going back. Add to middleware to an existing API, and we're going to add it to pages. And they created a file for us, middleware populate data.json. So we're going to open our, what am I doing? What are you doing, Paul? I'm going to open my project in VS Code. And let me bring that to the screen. Okay. So here's an example of what we're going to do. I'm just going to walk you through the code, and then we'll do it ourselves. So we're going to create a middleware where we're going to pass the query object in populate. I don't know, like an object with our query params for a populate. And inside our middleware, we have access to our context. And inside there, we have access to the query. So what we're going to do, we're just going to add the populate, the predefined population params that we have here, and then we're going to destructure the rest of the query. And that's basically going to give us this functionality. So within my code, here we are. Inside our source, our API, we have our page. And notice here's the middleware that we created called populate data. And what we want to do is we want to paste our query here. Okay. Gonna call it. So let's see here. Paste that here. And it's going to, we just got to do this quickly. Const populate. No, don't worry about it. Constant's fine. So now inside our, I have this annoying thing that complains everywhere. Quick fix. Hold on a second, because I have this thing called ArrowLens. It's a VS Code extension, and it just complains about everything. So if you want to see red everywhere, just do that. So metadata, populate, hold on. Object, F. It might populate. Let me, I think I pasted. Let me, no, that's fine. Hold on. Get rid of your comma. With this one? Is it? Yes, it doesn't like the comma. Use the comma. Thank you, Derek. I wasn't paying attention. So now that we have our populate, here we have access to our query. So we're going to do ctx dot query, and we're going to say it's going to equal populate. Thanks, VS Code. You're like genius. And we're going to destructure the rest of the query. So basically what this is going to do, and you could probably do this too, that's fine. It's going to insert our pre-population logic or filtering data from populate here inside our query. And so now we don't need to pass that query from the front end. The issue here is when you try this right now, I'm going to go run it locally here. So yarn develop, right? So let me close all these windows that we don't need. Let me go back to localhost 1337. If we go API, where's it? Pages. So when you go ahead and try to run that, notice it doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work, we have the middleware, right? We have the middleware that we created, but we didn't add it to our route. So I'm going to show you this example here. So what we need to do, we need to go to our route for our pages, and we need to add the options with the configuration to say, hey, middleware on find and find one. So I'm going to copy this just for brevity, go back to my VS Code. I have so many things open. We're going to go to our API pages, right? We want to make sure we choose the right one. Where we have our middleware, we're going to go into routes, we're going to go page, and we're going to insert an object with our configurations. Now, this is not the name of our middleware. If you're not sure, like, what's the name under the hood that Strapi references towards your middleware, one quick tip here, and this is something I really like. In your terminal, if I could only find it, I have too many things open. I'm going to start closing things. Like, we don't need this anymore. Let me go. Where's my terminal? We don't need this anymore. This was like such an organized stream, and then it devolved to too many open windows. So clear. So you could actually run Strapi with an interactive shell. So if I do yarn Strapi console, it's going to run. What are you doing? Oh, I know what it's doing. It's complaining that I'm using the wrong names here. Let's do this for now. Yarn, because I'm not using the right names. Yarn Strapi console. It's going to run Strapi in a interactive shell environment, which by typing Strapi, you could see all the methods and all the things that are available to you. And you could explore this on your own time, and it will take time, but it's a pretty fun way to look it up. So now I could type strapi.middlewares, click enter, and it's going to show me all the middlewares that our Strapi application has. And here you see we have API page.populate data, and that's actually the middleware that I want to point to. And so that is fantastic. So I'm going to go back to my code here, and I'm going to make sure I replace these with the proper middleware name here. And I think that should do it. And then I'm going to just yarn develop again to restart the application. And in theory, this shouldn't complain. So now when we go and refresh, notice we no longer need to provide our query string because it's all handled on our backend, and we get the data that we want. And if we wanted to push these changes to the cloud because our project is already deployed, all I have to do is just push the changes to my GitHub. So I'm going to go git status, git add, git commit message, add middleware, git push, and then within your Strapi Cloud, I believe it's this one. You're going to see that it's rebuilding. You see that once I pushed the changes to my GitHub, it's going to rebuild the Strapi project and push all the changes, which is pretty awesome. And so, quick recap. If you want to pre-populate data, the steps to do that is within the content type where you want that logic. First thing you want to do is create a middleware that's going to have that populate logic. We used a very simple example, but you could make it as complex as you want. But basically, you would stick your populate object here, and you would add it onto your query. So every time someone makes a request, when it hits this middleware, that populate object will be injected into your query, thus populating your data. And in order to hook up your middleware, what you need to do is you have to make sure on that specific route, in our case is our page route, you add those settings through the config, and you add it on the endpoints that you want. Like you want the find and find one, and you make sure you add your middlewares. By the way, this is similar how you would add policies. You would add them here as well. So I know we are at the last 10 minutes of the so what I want to do is see if anyone has any questions about what we did. And while you think of your questions, I'm going to quickly recap what we did today. So the first thing we did is we learned how to let me go here, localhost for the second, start my application so I could talk about it. So the first thing we did is we set up our, and I probably need to start my server. Come on. Yarn develop. All right. So the first thing we did is we saw how quickly you can get started with Strapi. We ran, npx create Strapi app at latest, and boom, we were able to have our admin panel. So let me log in. Of course, I can't type my password correctly. And then we covered our menu on the left. We talked about the content manager, content type builder. We talked about the difference between top level fields versus our relations. And I already closed my slides. So we talked about top level fields. If actually, let me go here, do add another field. So we talked about top level fields being text, rich text, number, date, our Boolean, our and enum, password, and email. All those fields are pre-populated automatically. Everything else, meaning media, relations, components, and dynamic zones, you need to tell Strapi specifically what you want to populate. Thus, we use our populate query builder to build our query, so we could pass that string to our front end and be able to get the data that we need. And again, if you're ever having trouble making those query strings, just Google Strapi query builder tool, and it's going to take you to interactive query builder. And this is what we use to build our query that generated this query string that we passed. So make sure you keep that in mind. We also took a look on how to create our first page, how to create components to allow reusable components like a button link, a hero section, or SEO component. We also talked about this concept of using a dynamic zone in our application. Granted, we only have one component here, but it will give your editors and content managers an option of different components that you pre-built for them to use to structure the content. That's pretty awesome. Then we took and look at how to use Yarn Strapi. My cat is in the way. I'm sorry, kitty. I can't see the screen. Say hello and then say goodbye. Bye, everyone. Okay. And then we took a look at how you could use Yarn Strapi help import or export. I'm just going to use export, for example. And again, all these CLI commands, they have the help option that you could see. We also took a look at how you could use Yarn Strapi help transfer to push data to our cloud. We also took a look on how easily we could deploy our application to Strapi Cloud. And what's awesome about it, it's literally 2 steps. Step 1, and Derek, thanks for the help, and we'll see you later. Step 1, save your project to GitHub. Step 2, click create project and follow the steps, and that's it. So very easy and convenient way. So you could always rewatch this recording. It'll be available on our website. And also, if you have any questions about anything, Monday through Friday at 12:30 p.m. CST time, we have open office hours. All of you are welcome to join and come in. So I just want to say, if there's no other questions, thank you very much for joining. I hope you found this educational. And I know there's so many other things that we could talk about. And we'll continue to do these webinars covering different parts of Strapi to help you be able to have a great experience. And if you ever have ideas of what other topics you want to see, stop by open office hours. Let me know, and I'll actually share my email here. If you have any topic ideas that you want to cover, um, you could email me at paul.braslavsky@strapi.io. I'll love to help all you out. And so, if there's no questions, I know we're almost at time. I just want to say thank you very much. It was a lot of fun hang out with all of you today. And I hope to see you on Discord. And you all have a great rest of the day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And thanks again. And take care, everyone. Bye.